after last year's tragic events, Japan wants you to come over, and now. Japan might value tourists, but does it really know how to entice them? And can this country convince you of two things? Is it safe, and can you afford it? Forget the snow report. What's the radiation level? These may be some of the best skiing conditions in the world, but ever since the tsunami and the Fukushima nuclear accident last year, this place has had an uphill struggle trying to persuade tourists to come here.
My Geiger counter showed a negligible radiation reading. The Alps Snowpark and Resort in Bandai is some 100 kilometers away from the Fukushima nuclear plant after all, but fear is seldom based on science and reason alone.
Normally, 100% the operation here, but the down by far the number of the customer in this year. And also, the foreign people, the 90% down. That is so terrible.
Tourism only accounts for a tiny proportion of Japan's economy right now, but I'm going on a journey to find out how it intends to change all that. Well, here's one thing going for it. Japan has one of the best rail networks in the world, and Tokyo Central Station is one of Japan's busiest hubs. Forget lost in translation, what about lost in train station?
These bullet trains, or Shinkansen, have been going for 50 years now, and they still look and feel futuristic.
In 1964, these trains were already travelling at over 200 kilometres an hour. These days, they can surpass 300. So, an early morning arrival at Matsushima in the Tohoku region in the northeast of Japan, agreed to be one of the country's top 3 most scenic views. A glorious pink-hued dawn sky awaits. But a year ago, this natural serenity was violently shattered.
Soon after the quake, we took our guests outside to a safe place behind a hotel. Lots of cars came up the hill with people telling us about the tsunami warning. The power was cut off, the water stopped, and the aftershocks continued.
This bay here in Matsushima was largely spared by the tsunami, which is pretty incredible considering how close we are to the epicenter of the earthquake. And that was largely because of those little islands behind me, which acted as a breakwater. The people who work in the tourism industry here, however, took a big hit, as potential visitors were scared away by the worry of radiation.
The tourist trade all but dried up in the immediate aftermath. Some businesses went under. Only now are locals and other Japanese visitors trickling back. Many people come to pay homage to Matsushima's famous religious sites and to express their unity. Today, tourism is back to 80% of pre-tsunami levels, but cruise ships remain down by some 40%, and foreign visitors in particular are still staying away. Once again, you're struck by the stoical, holistic view of nature the Japanese take. Flux and upheaval are to be expected. The rough comes with the smooth. Yuko Isoda has worked for 40 years in the bay's largest inn. On the night of the disaster, she turned it into a refuge. In pitch dark, guests were herded from their room to the common areas. There was no fresh water, no electricity, little fresh food, and sanitation became a big concern. Yuko's father built this hotel way back in 1951, and she carries a sense of responsibility for the entire community.
I thought perhaps it was the end of my business. Maybe I would have to sack people, but I couldn't say that to my employees. My husband and I talked about it in the darkness.
But hope springs eternal, and many locals believe Matsushima was in some way blessed.
Okay, are you ready? Okay.
And the spirit's obvious amongst the younger generation too. These students on a visit from their engineering college have very vivid personal memories of the tsunami.
I was at home and there was a long tremor and I grabbed my grandpa. When I came back, the whole house was smashed up.
For this lad and his friends, it's all about the future now. Tourism can help rebuild this area once again. So, time to kickstart tourism to Japan. And what better way to grab the world's attention than be the first country to fly a brand new plane, the Dreamliner. It's been 7 years since the contract for the Boeing 787 was signed, but apparently it's been worth the wait.
The 787 made it possible for us to, start a new operation to the new destinations, and so it generates additional traffic.
The Dreamliner. Now the jury's still out on whether this is a game changer or not. But then again, bigger windows, better air quality, smoother ride, it's got to make a difference, hasn't it? But many say the real game changer will be when low-cost airlines finally settle in Japan.
This year sees the launch of not just one, but 3 new low-cost carriers, or LCCs, made possible by the expansion and capacity at both of Tokyo's main airports. They promise tickets at half the price of legacy carriers, and cheaper than the bullet trains too.
Maybe rather younger generations and also the people who are very sensitive to the cost issue. The bullet train is now becoming faster and faster and more convenient. So actually we are in now severe competition with JR, particularly bullet train. But LCC can offer much cheaper price.
But providing better and more affordable transport is only part of the battle. There's also the perennial issue over Japan's attitude to outsiders.
Doing a time out was we were providing information to people in English that they couldn't get in English otherwise.
James Hadfield has been in Japan for 9 years. He started work at Time Out Tokyo just days before the tsunami last year and witnessed its effect on the capital. But he says there's a bigger hurdle for the Japanese to overcome.
Institutionally, I'd say it's generally not very strong at marketing itself to a foreign audience just because there's been so much domestic demand. There's been such a strong domestic economy that they haven't really had to.
As an outsider, what frustrates you most about Japan?
You just said it really. You're an outsider here. And I'd say as a foreigner living in Japan, even if you're here for a really, really long time, I'd say it's very difficult to ever get beyond being treated as a foreigner living in Japan.
It's a common reaction that the Japanese government is aware it has to address right now.
So, a country that's never been very forward about selling itself is in the middle of a charm offensive. And what's its secret weapon?
Send me all bala for you. Da, 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 da.
He's in charge of tourism. Find out if he's for real after the break.
Tokyo, a world-class metropolis which has never really seen the need to shout from the rooftops about itself. Did you know it has more Michelin-starred restaurants than any other city in the world? Did you know it's now got the world's tallest tower? You would if it happened to be in Dubai, I suggest. And when it comes to techie tourism, clubbing tourism and anime, the city is quite simply unbeatable. But tradition remains one of Tokyo's unique selling points.
Cool glasses! All the rage. Japan is finally coming alive to the potential of tourism. But how are they going to entice us to come over? Well, how about traditional charm with a modern twist?
Fiona, professionally known as Sayuki, is the first woman of non-Japanese origin to debut and work as part of a geisha house. She's from Melbourne in Australia.
Being white is absolutely no advantage whatsoever in the geisha community. Customers looking for geisha are not looking to find white geisha. So I had a very much more difficult time than the average new geisha. So now I'll put you in a kimono.
Sayuki was first drawn to geisha through academic interest and then as a documentary maker. But observing wasn't enough.
It's the first time this ever happened in Japan. So I had to go through people who might have known people in the geisha world. I really had nowhere to begin.
Her shop encourages people to sample traditional Japanese costume. But she says she's happiest performing and making geisha more accessible to all in the tea house.
What would you like?
Sayuki, or Fiona, is nothing if not a tenacious businesswoman, and last year, after splitting from her local geisha association, she's now involved in a business venture that targets the tourist market.
This is a new plan together with one of Japan's biggest tour companies, HIS, and we're inviting foreigners to come and not have a full course meal, but just have drinks and snacks.
You judge for yourself whether this is your cup of tea.
Save all bala for you.
From the sublime to the ridiculous?
And you're in charge of tourism for here, yeah?
Tourism, very important, yes.
This is the man that persuaded Lady Gaga to come over to Japan and declare it was safe for visitors. He's the man entrusted with projecting Japan abroad as a fun, exciting place. Hiroshi Mizuhata is certainly putting heart and soul into his mission.
I believe that tourism could play an important role in reconstruction after the quake and also in revitalization of the Japanese economy. Up until now, tourism hasn't been Japan's priority, but now we're keen to make the country into a leading international brand.
World Cup will make Japanese people happy.
His reputation was sealed when he started a football team that from scratch became Japanese League Cup winners within 14 years.
Tourism, football, I think same. Football and tourism also make every people happy. We are the world, we are the children.
Behind the jokiness, there is a hard-headed pragmatism. Like virtually everyone else I spoke to, when asked why tourism was important to Japan, the commissioner replied it was because of the country's rapidly declining birth rate.
Japan, thank you!
The population is predicted to drop by nearly 30 million within less than 40 years. Foreign visitors are needed to supplant the fall in domestic tourism.
Japan, thank you!
And it's this kind of flamboyance they hope will entice more visitors. Oh, and persuading Western tourists in particular that it's affordable.
If you are worried about the cost of living and travelling in Japan, and a lot of people are, there are solutions. Not only do these long-distance overnight luxury buses get you from A to B, but they have all the trappings and trimmings of a first-class aeroplane seat, and you can get a good night's sleep too. All for around $110, two-thirds of the price of a bullet train.
And cheap deals like these for foreigners only, with heavy government backing, are now much more common. Seeing as the value of the yen is unlikely to fall significantly anytime soon, schemes like these may be the best bet for budget tourists. And so to my last stop of the journey through the heartlands of Japan.
They call this region, high up and in the northwest of the country, the roof of Japan. It's a godsend if you're into all things traditional, architecture, cuisine and culture. Used to be the exclusive preserve of Japanese visitors, but now they want foreigners to come and enjoy it too.
The Ryokan is a traditional traveller's inn dating back 500 years. And my host, a former air stewardess who spent 20 years in the USA. First lesson, the craft behind traditional Japanese cuisine.
Wow. Yuki, what is this?
Well, this called funamori. It's a sashimi plate. There is a carving, the work you can see. It is very traditional. And as you know, Japanese love to eat sashimi.
This is all part, isn't it, of a wider aim that you have to attract foreign tourists to experience traditional Japanese culture?
Well, first of all, the ryokan culture is very unique compared to Western style hotels. And we serve the traditional meals, as well as we follow the rule of we are passing on the generation to generations. And I'm so honored to teach some of the guests from overseas for traditional way.
From food to futons, the inquisitive visitor can learn a lot here. There's the healing powers of the onsen, or natural hot springs, that are everywhere on these volcanic islands. The generous side of nature, as they say here.
This ryokan offers the traditional way, and those kind of stuff is all educational.
You want me to try this?
Yes, please.
So what chance a novice like me trying traditional taiko drumming? But I'm not the only one that feels like an outsider, it seems. After 20 years away, and being originally from Tokyo anyway, Yuki herself had to battle for acceptance in a town that is still run by a handful of family dynasties.
We need people from overseas. We need to express ourselves. We have to relearn what kind of a rich culture we have and the history behind it.
And finally, to the summit of my journey, trekking up in the mountains in search of something very special.
Some people say it's the world's best advertisement for Mother Nature.
This is what they come from all over the world to see, the Japanese snow monkeys. So famous, they even have their own paparazzi.
Well, it's a pretty rugged lifestyle. It's a little bit like people were, a few centuries ago. They're on the move. They've got no fixed abode, no house. So, generally speaking, they're on the move each day, and they sleep in a different place each night.
The monkeys were given their own dedicated hot spring to stop them jumping into the human ones and scrumping all the apples from the valley below.
Now listen, I'm not sentimental, but when you see a little baby monkey like this, your heart just melts. So cute. The rhythm of life may be slow and traditional here, but the Japanese are nothing if not pragmatic. They know in the aftermath of 3/11 and with the declining birth rate, they need international tourists here and now. It's time to march to a different beat. But it's going to be a learning curve, not just for us, exploring a country that seems to have layer upon layer of hidden secrets, but for Japanese society too, opening up and letting us into their world. And I suspect the pace of that change will get even faster.